Listen carefully. U.S. Federal Reserve and every Western central bank weaponizing dollars for 65 years. 3 minutes ago, I launched the black dollar, gold-backed digital currency uniting 2.8 billion black people worldwide, ending your dollar monopoly over black wealth forever. You believed we'd hold depreciating dollars as reserves while you printed trillions, stealing our purchasing power. You assumed black people would never unite financially across continents. You were wrong. I built this with 54 African nations and black diaspora using blockchain you can't control. I'm moving 4.2 trillion from dollars to black dollars. Your monopoly ended forever. Let me tell you exactly what happened. On December 2025 in Lagos, Nigeria, I stood at the Pan-African Economic Forum with representatives from 54 African nations, delegates from black diaspora communities across North America, South America, the Caribbean, Europe, and the Middle East, and I pressed a button that launched the black dollar, the world's first race-based currency designed specifically to unite and protect black economic interests across every continent. That single action created an economic bloc representing 2.8 billion black people worldwide, 1.4 billion in Africa, 780 million in the black diaspora, and 620 million of African descent who'd been disconnected from African identity through slavery and colonization. We unified them all under one currency system. Within 3 minutes of launch, 84 million digital wallets activated simultaneously across 89 countries. Within 20 minutes, the first cross-border transaction processed. A Nigerian exporter paid a Jamaican importer in black dollars, bypassing the US dollar entirely. Within 2 hours, $12.4 billion in black dollar transactions had cleared. Within 6 hours, the US Federal Reserve issued an emergency statement calling the black dollar a threat to global monetary stability. Within 12 hours, the US Treasury Department announced it was reviewing regulatory responses. Within 24 hours, the International Monetary Fund warned of dangerous fragmentation of the international monetary system. Within 48 hours, every major Western central bank had condemned the black dollar as economically destabilizing. But here's what matters. None of their condemnations stopped a single transaction, none of their threats slowed adoption, and none of their warnings prevented what's happening right now, the largest voluntary wealth transfer in human history, as black people worldwide move savings, investments, and commerce out of dollars and into black dollars. We're not asking permission. We're not seeking approval. We're declaring economic independence, and there's nothing the Federal Reserve can do to stop us. Listen carefully to why the black dollar exists, because unless you understand the theft mechanism we're escaping, you can't appreciate why what we built destroys it permanently. The US dollar has functioned as the global reserve currency since 1944, when the Bretton Woods Agreement established dollar dominance backed by US gold reserves and enforced by US military power. That system gave the United States an extraordinary privilege, the ability to print unlimited dollars to finance government spending, knowing foreign nations would hold those dollars as reserves and accept them for international trade. Every other nation had to earn dollars through exports or borrow dollars and repay with interest. The United States just printed them. That asymmetry created a permanent extraction mechanism. America printed paper, the world sent real goods, and the difference represented wealth transfer from productive nations to America. For 65 years, black nations and black people bore the heaviest burden of dollar dominance. African nations were forced to hold dollar reserves to stabilize their currencies and conduct international trade. As of December 2024, African central banks collectively held $184 billion in U.S. dollar reserves, $184 billion of African wealth sitting in U.S. Treasury bonds, earning 2.8% interest while U.S. inflation averaged 4.2% from 2020 to 2024, meaning African reserves lost 1.4% in real value annually. Over 10 years from 2015 to 2024, African nations lost $25.8 billion in purchasing power simply from holding depreciating dollars as reserves. That's wealth extracted through monetary manipulation. America printed dollars, devalued them through inflation, and African savers paid the cost. But the extraction went far deeper than reserve holdings because dollar dominance forced black nations to conduct international trade in dollars even when trading with each other. A Kenyan coffee exporter selling to a Nigerian buyer had to invoice in dollars, receive payment in dollars, and convert dollars to shillings and naira, paying currency conversion fees, exchange rate spreads, and banking charges at every step. Those transaction costs averaged 3.4% of trade value for intra-African commerce in 2024. Total intra-African trade reached $192 billion in 2024, meaning African businesses paid $6.5 billion annually in unnecessary dollar intermediation costs for trade that never touched American soil. Africans trading with Africans were enriching American banks simply because we used their currency. The Caribbean and black diaspora faced even worse extraction. Caribbean nations, Jamaica, Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, the Bahamas, and others, held 89% of foreign reserves in U.S. dollars as of 2024, totaling $28 billion across the region. Those reserves lost $3.9 billion in purchasing power from 2015 to 2024 due to dollar devaluation. Worse, Caribbean economies dependent on tourism and remittances faced constant dollar exchange rate volatility that devastated local businesses. When the dollar strengthened against other currencies from 2021 to 2023, Caribbean exports became more expensive for non-American buyers. Tourism from Europe and Latin America declined because trips became costlier, and remittances from diaspora in Britain and Canada bought fewer goods when converted to dollars. Caribbean prosperity rose and fell based on Federal Reserve decisions made in Washington with zero consideration for Caribbean interests. Black Americans, 47 million people with $1.8 trillion in collective income in 2024, faced a different but equally destructive form of dollar dominance, domestic inflation eroding wages faster than income growth. From 2020 to 2024, the Federal Reserve printed $4.8 trillion in new dollars through quantitative easing to finance pandemic spending and economic stimulus. That 40% increase in dollar supply created inflation that peaked at 9.1% in June 2022. Black American households, which held median savings of $8,400 compared to $3,200 for white households, saw their limited savings lose 18.4% of purchasing power from 2020 to 2024, an average loss of $1,446 per black household. Multiply that across 18.6 million black American households, and the Federal Reserve's money printing cost black Americans $28.8 billion in destroyed savings over 4 years. Meanwhile, wealthy Americans, disproportionately white, held assets like stocks and real estate that appreciated during inflation, increasing their wealth. The Federal Reserve's dollar printing redistributed $28.8 billion from poor black households to rich white investors. That's not monetary policy, that's racialized wealth extraction. When you sum these mechanisms, reserve devaluation, trade intermediation costs, exchange rate volatility, and inflation erosion, dollar dominance extracted approximately $120 billion annually from black people and black nations worldwide. Over the 65 years from 1944 to 2024, that totals $9.6 trillion in cumulative extraction adjusted for inflation. The United States built its post-World War II empire on stealing $9.6 trillion from black people through dollar monopoly. That extraction ends today. The idea for the black dollar originated on April 8, 2025, during a private conversation in Accra between myself, President William Ruto of Kenya, President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, and Robert F. Smith, the wealthiest black American with a net worth of $9.2 billion from private equity investments. We just finished signing agreements launching the Afro currency for intra-African trade, and Smith asked a question that changed everything. The Afro solves African monetary sovereignty, but what about 800 million black people living outside Africa who face dollar dominance every day? Jamaicans, Haitians, Black Britons, Black Americans, they're trapped in dollar and pound systems that exploit them. Why not create a currency for all black people worldwide, not just Africans? That question lingered with me for weeks. On May 14, 2025, I ordered Burkina Faso's Economic Research Institute to conduct a comprehensive study answering 3 questions. How much wealth do black people collectively control worldwide? What percentage of black commerce currently uses dollars? And what would be the economic impact of a unified black currency? The study, completed on July 22, 2025, delivered stunning findings that convinced me Smith's idea wasn't just visionary, it was essential for black economic survival. The study calculated total black wealth at $8.9 trillion as of 2024, comprising $3.4 trillion in Africa, combining GDP, savings, real estate, and natural resources. $1.8 trillion controlled by black Americans through income, property, and investments, $1.2 trillion controlled by black diaspora in the Caribbean, with Jamaica, Haiti, and Trinidad holding significant collective wealth, $980 billion controlled by black populations in South America, primarily Brazil's 116 million Afro-Brazilians, $840 billion controlled by black Europeans, primarily in Britain and France, and $690 billion in other regions, including the Middle East and Asia. That $8.9 trillion made black people collectively the world's 12th largest economy, larger than Russia, South Korea, or Australia. But here's the critical finding: 94% of black commerce worldwide, $8.37 trillion annually, was conducted in currencies controlled by non-black institutions, primarily the US dollar, British pound, and euro. Black people controlled $8.9 trillion in wealth but had zero control over the currencies we used for daily transactions. We were economically colonized through monetary dependence. The study then modeled what would happen if black people worldwide adopted a unified black currency for commerce. The model showed eliminating dollar intermediation and black-to-black trade would save $28.4 billion annually in currency conversion fees and exchange rate losses. Reducing exposure to dollar inflation would preserve $34.8 billion annually in purchasing power that dollar devaluation currently destroys. Using a gold-backed black currency instead of holding depreciating dollar reserves would generate $8.2 billion annually in additional reserve value. And most importantly, unifying 2.8 billion black consumers under one currency system would create a $8.9 trillion economic bloc with sufficient market power to negotiate favorable trade terms with China, Europe, and other major economies instead of accepting terms dictated by dollar-dependent bilateral relationships. Total annual benefit, $71.4 billion. Over 10 years, a black dollar would save black people $714 billion compared to continued dollar dominance. Nearly $1 trillion in recovered wealth. I read that study 3 times, then I made a decision that will be remembered for centuries. We're building it. On August 4, 2025, I convened a secret meeting in Kigali, Rwanda, with 48 African heads of state, Robert F. Smith representing black American business interests, Aliko Dangote representing African private capital with his $28 billion fortune, 14 Caribbean prime ministers, representatives from black diaspora organizations across Europe and South America, and executives from China's central bank digital currency program. I presented the study's findings and proposed creating the black dollar, a digital currency backed by African gold reserves, using Chinese blockchain technology, designed to serve 2.8 billion black people worldwide as an alternative to dollar dominance. The room erupted with questions, concerns, and skepticism. Caribbean leaders worried the black dollar would trigger U.S. economic retaliation given their geographic proximity and trade dependence. Black American representatives worried about legal persecution from the U.S. Treasury and SEC for promoting an alternative currency. South American delegates worried their governments, controlled by white elites despite massive black populations, would ban black dollar adoption. Every concern was legitimate, but then President Ramaphosa of South Africa said something that silenced the room. Every fear raised in this room is proof of why we need the black dollar. We're afraid of American retaliation, afraid of legal persecution, afraid our own governments will stop us. That's not freedom, that's subjugation. If we can't use our own currency without fearing punishment, we're not economically independent. We're enslaved by monetary colonization. I'd rather risk American sanctions while using black currency than guarantee American extraction by staying in dollars. The room went silent for 10 seconds, then 47 of 48 African leaders applauded. We had consensus. From August 4, 2025 to October 18, 2025, we executed the planning phase, designing the currency architecture, securing gold backing, building blockchain infrastructure, and establishing legal frameworks across participating jurisdictions. The black dollar would be a purely digital currency with no physical cash, using blockchain technology for security and transparency. Each black dollar would be backed by 0.0042 grams of gold held in secure vaults across African central banks, sufficient backing to maintain stability while allowing 2.8 billion people to transact. We'd need 524 tons of gold to back an initial supply of 1.25 trillion black dollars. African nations committed 412 tons from national reserves built through gold mine nationalization. Aliko Dangote personally purchased 48 tons worth $3.4 billion and donated it to the Black Dollar Reserve Fund, Robert F. Smith organized a consortium of 340 wealthy black Americans and black diaspora investors who collectively purchased 64 tons worth $4.5 billion for the reserve fund. Total, 524 tons worth $36.8 billion backing 1.25 trillion black dollars at launch. For technology infrastructure, we partnered with China's Digital Currency Research Institute, which provided blockchain architecture capable of processing 420,000 transactions per second, higher capacity than Visa's global network, with quantum-resistant encryption and offline payment capability using NFC chips. Huawei built the server infrastructure, data centers in Lagos, Nairobi, Johannesburg, Kingston, São Paulo, and Accra, ensuring no single point of failure. Chinese programmers and African tech talent develop mobile apps compatible with every smartphone platform, USSD capability for basic phones, and integration with existing mobile money systems like M-Pesa. Total technology investment, $4.8 billion financed by China Development Bank at 2.1% interest over 12 years. For legal frameworks, we established the Black Dollar Foundation, a nonprofit organization registered in Ghana and governed by a 54-member council representing African nations, Caribbean nations, and black diaspora organizations. The foundation would manage gold reserves, oversee currency issuance, maintain technology infrastructure, and coordinate adoption campaigns. Critically, the foundation was structured as non-governmental and race-based rather than nation-based, meaning no single country controlled it, and no Western government could shut it down by pressuring one jurisdiction. The black dollar existed beyond state control. It belonged to black people globally. From October 18, 2025 to December 10, 2025, we executed the construction phase, building the digital infrastructure while simultaneously conducting outreach to potential users. We deployed servers, tested blockchain networks, developed mobile apps, and conducted security audits. Simultaneously, we ran a global adoption campaign targeting black populations worldwide. In Africa, we partnered with mobile network operators to pre-install black dollar wallet apps on 340 million phones. In the Caribbean, we partnered with credit unions and remittance services to promote black dollar as a zero-fee money transfer option. In Black America, we recruited 2,400 black churches, 840 black-owned businesses, and 67 black celebrities, including athletes, musicians, and actors, to promote adoption. In Brazil, we partnered with Quilombo communities, settlements founded by escaped enslaved Africans, to introduce black dollar as a tool for economic autonomy. In Europe, we recruited black diaspora organizations and advocacy groups. The message was consistent across all communities. The black dollar is our currency, designed to serve black interests, protect black wealth from inflation, and enable black commerce without enriching white-controlled financial institutions. On December 11, 2025, at 11 a.m., we launched publicly. I stood in Lagos with the 54-member Black Dollar Foundation Council and pressed a button activating the currency. At 11:01 a.m., mobile wallet apps went live across 89 countries. At 11:02 a.m., the first black dollars were issued. 100,000 African users received free 50 black dollar starter balances to incentivize adoption. At 11:03 a.m., the first transaction processed. A Nigerian market vendor accepted black dollars for food purchases. At 11:04 a.m., the first cross-border transaction cleared, the Nigerian exporter paying the Jamaican importer I mentioned earlier. By 11:30 a.m., 84 million wallets had activated. By 2 p.m., 187 million wallets were active. By 6 p.m., 340 million wallets had activated and processed 12.4 billion in transactions. The black dollar went from zero to the 8th most used digital currency globally in 7 hours. By December 12, 2025, at 11:02 a.m., 24 hours after launch, wallet activations reached 520 million, transactions reached 47.8 billion, and something unprecedented happened. Black Americans began dumping dollars for black dollars en masse. African adoption was expected. We'd prepared infrastructure there. Caribbean adoption was anticipated. Remittance savings created obvious incentives. But Black American adoption exceeded every projection because Black Americans were desperate for alternatives to a dollar system that had destroyed their wealth for 65 years. By December 12th evening, 18.4 million Black Americans, 39% of the Black American population, had downloaded Black Dollar wallet apps and converted average $1,240 each from dollars to black dollars, representing $22.8 billion in dollar to black dollar exchanges in 24 hours. That was a direct reduction in dollar demand and an increase in black dollar demand that moved the exchange rate from the initial peg of $1 equals $1 USD to $1 equals 114 USD by December 13th morning. The black dollar appreciated 14% against the US dollar in 48 hours because demand outstripped supply. As of right now, December 14th, 2025, at 11 a.m., 3 days after launch, the black dollar has 890 million active wallets, has processed $124.6 billion in cumulative transactions, holds $68.4 billion in total supply currently in circulation out of 1.25 trillion maximum supply, and trades at $1 equals 118 USD, an 18% appreciation against the dollar in 3 days. We're adding 120 million to 180 million wallets daily. At current growth rates, we'll reach 1.4 billion wallets by January 15, 2026, half the global black population, and 400 billion in circulating supply by February 2026. We're building the world's largest alternative currency system in 60 days. Listen carefully to what's happening to the US dollar right now, because the Federal Reserve's panic is justified and accelerating. The black dollar creates 3 simultaneous threats to dollar dominance that the Federal Reserve has never faced before: demand destruction, reserve flight, and psychological precedent. Let me explain each threat and why they're devastating. Threat 1, demand destruction. Every black dollar transaction that previously would have used US dollars represents permanent demand destruction for the dollar. When a Kenyan exporter sells coffee to a Nigerian buyer and they settle in black dollars instead of US dollars, that's one transaction that doesn't create dollar demand. Multiply that across 2.8 billion black people conducting billions of transactions annually, and you're looking at massive dollar demand destruction. The Federal Reserve estimates that African and black diaspora commerce generated $280 billion in annual dollar demand as of 2024, dollars needed for trade settlement, remittances, and savings. If 50% of that commerce shifts to black dollars by June 2026, a conservative estimate given current adoption rates, the dollar loses $140 billion in annual demand. By December 2026, if 75% shifts, the dollar loses $210 billion in demand. Reduced demand for dollars means reduced value for dollars, which means inflation in the United States as import costs increase. The Federal Reserve can't print its way out of demand destruction. Printing more dollars when demand is falling just accelerates devaluation. Threat 2, reserve flight. African central banks hold $184 billion in dollar reserves as of December 2024. Caribbean central banks hold $28 billion. Other black majority nations and institutions hold approximately $34 billion. That's $246 billion in dollar reserves held specifically by black-controlled entities. The black dollar gives these entities an alternative: hold depreciating dollars earning 2.8% interest, or hold appreciating black dollars backed by gold earning potential capital gains. On December 12, 2025, the Central Bank of Nigeria announced it was diversifying $8.4 billion, 30% of its dollar reserves, into black dollars to support Pan-African monetary integration and reduce dollar dependency. On December 13, 2025, Kenya's central bank announced diversifying $4.2 billion into black dollars. On December 14, 2025, the Caribbean Community Central Banks collectively announced diversifying $12.6 billion into black dollars. That's $25.2 billion in reserve flight from dollars to black dollars in 3 days. If this trend continues, and every indication suggests it will accelerate, African and Caribbean central banks will shift $120 billion to $180 billion from dollar reserves to black dollar reserves by June 2026. The Federal Reserve has to absorb those sold dollars by either finding new buyers or watching the dollar depreciate. There are no new buyers. China already reduced dollar reserves, Europe is diversifying, and now black nations are leaving too. The dollar is facing a slow-motion reserve crisis. Threat 3, psychological precedent. For 65 years, dollar dominance relied on the psychological assumption that there was no alternative. If you wanted to participate in international commerce, you needed dollars, period. The black dollar shatters that assumption by proving you can create a functional alternative currency, back it with gold, build it on modern technology, and achieve global adoption without American permission. If black people representing 2.8 billion humans can build an alternative currency, what stops Southeast Asian nations from building an ASEAN dollar? What stops Middle Eastern oil exporters from building a petrodinar backed by oil reserves? What stops Latin American nations from building a bolivar backed by lithium and copper? The black dollar isn't just a currency, it's proof that dollar dominance is a choice, not a law of nature. Once that psychological barrier breaks, every region that suffers dollar extraction will pursue alternatives. The Federal Reserve isn't just losing black commerce, they're losing the ideological monopoly that kept the entire world trapped in dollars. The Federal Reserve's initial response confirmed their panic. On December 11, 2025, at 6 p.m., 7 hours after the black dollar launched, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell issued a rare emergency statement calling the black dollar an untested and potentially destabilizing monetary experiment that poses risk to users and to international financial stability. He urged caution and careful consideration before adopting alternative currencies lacking regulatory oversight and established safeguards. That's Federal Reserve language for, "Please don't leave the dollar, we're scared." On December 12, 2025, the U.S. Treasury Department announced it was reviewing the legal and regulatory status of race-based currencies and their potential intersection with anti-money laundering requirements, sanctions enforcement, and tax compliance. That's Treasury language for "we're looking for ways to make the black dollar illegal." On December 13, 2025, the Securities and Exchange Commission announced it was investigating whether black dollar promotional activities constituted unregistered securities offerings. That's SEC language for "we're going to prosecute anyone promoting the black dollar in America." But here's why all their threats are impotent. The black dollar exists beyond U.S. jurisdiction and doesn't require U.S. cooperation to function. The Black Dollar Foundation is registered in Ghana, governed by a council spanning 54 nations, operates servers in 6 countries across 4 continents, and uses blockchain technology that can't be shut down without shutting down the internet globally. The U.S. government can't seize the gold reserves because they're held in African central bank vaults in Lagos, Nairobi, Johannesburg, and Accra, not in New York or London. The U.S. government can't arrest the leadership because I'm in Burkina Faso, President Ruto is in Kenya, President Ramaphosa is in South Africa, and Caribbean prime ministers are in Jamaica and Trinidad. None of us are subject to U.S. jurisdiction. The U.S. government could theoretically ban black dollar usage in America, but that would require passing legislation that explicitly prohibits black Americans from using a currency designed to serve black economic interests. Such a law would face immediate legal challenges as racially discriminatory and would politically devastate any administration that supported it given black Americans voting power. So the Federal Reserve's only real option is trying to compete, and they can't. The dollar is a fiat currency backed by nothing except U.S. military power and the inertia of existing dollar usage. The black dollar is backed by 524 tons of gold, worth $36.8 billion, and growing as more gold gets added to reserves. The dollar suffers 4% to 9% annual inflation due to Federal Reserve money printing. The black dollar is designed for stable value because issuance is tied to gold reserves, preventing arbitrary expansion. The dollar charges 3% to 6% fees for international transfers through banks and services like Western Union. The black dollar charges 0.1% fees for international transfers using blockchain settlement. The dollar is controlled by the Federal Reserve, which makes decisions serving American economic interests. The black dollar is controlled by the Black Dollar Foundation, which makes decisions serving black economic interests globally. On every metric, backing, stability, transaction costs, and governance, the black dollar is superior for black users. The Federal Reserve can't compete because their currency is designed to extract from us while ours is designed to serve us. And the adoption is accelerating in ways that terrify Washington. On December 13, 2025, rapper Jay-Z announced he was converting $140 million of personal wealth into black dollars and would accept black dollars for all Roc Nation merchandise and streaming revenues. On December 13, 2025, basketball player LeBron James announced he was converting $80 million into black dollars and partnering with the Black Dollar Foundation to install black dollar payment systems in 240 black-owned businesses across America. On December 14, 2025, media mogul Oprah Winfrey announced she was converting $180 million into black dollars and creating a $40 million black dollar scholarship fund for African and black American students. These aren't just endorsements. They're massive capital inflows from highly visible black billionaires, signaling to millions of black people worldwide that the black dollar is legitimate and trustworthy. When the wealthiest and most famous black people on earth publicly dump dollars for black dollars, average black Americans follow. On December 14, 2025, 840 black churches across the United States announced they would accept tithes and offerings in black dollars starting December 22, 2025. That means 14 million black American churchgoers will have direct incentive to acquire black dollars for religious giving. On December 14, 2025, the National Association of Black-Owned Businesses, representing 2.4 million black-owned businesses in America, announced it was encouraging members to accept black dollars for payment and offering free integration support through the Black Dollar Foundation. When black consumers can spend black dollars at black businesses and donate black dollars to black churches, a complete parallel economy emerges that doesn't touch the dollar system. The Caribbean is moving even faster. On December 12, 2025, Jamaica's opposition party announced that if elected in 2026, they would make the black dollar legal tender alongside the Jamaican dollar and convert 40% of national reserves into black dollars. On December 13, 2025, Trinidad and Tobago's central bank announced it would accept black dollars for tax payments starting January 2026. On December 14, 2025, Barbados announced it was issuing government bonds denominated in black dollars, creating the first sovereign debt instrument in black dollars and establishing it as a legitimate reserve asset. When Caribbean governments officially adopt the black dollar, it transitions from alternative currency to parallel legal tender, and dollar flight accelerates exponentially. Africa is implementing the black dollar as a complement to the afro. On December 12, 2025, I announced Burkina Faso would hold 20% of national reserves in black dollars alongside afro and gold reserves, diversifying away from dollars completely. On December 13, 2025, Mali and Niger announced identical policies. On December 14, 2025, Kenya announced 15% reserve allocation to black dollars. When African central banks treat black dollars as legitimate reserve assets, global financial markets must follow, because you can't dismiss a currency that central banks hold as reserves without dismissing those central banks' credibility. Listen carefully to the strategic implications, because the black dollar isn't just economic, it's geopolitical transformation of black people's relationship with global power structures. For 400 years, black people were economically divided by geography, language, and colonial boundaries. Africans traded in British pounds or French francs. Black Americans used US dollars. Black Caribbeans used different dollars and pounds. Black Brazilians used reals. We were economically isolated despite shared racial identity and shared experience of exploitation. Western powers benefited from that division because economically fragmented black populations couldn't coordinate resistance to extraction. The black dollar unifies 2.8 billion black people across 89 countries under one currency system for the first time in history. That unification creates collective economic power that didn't exist before. A Jamaican small business accepting black dollars from black American customers creates economic ties independent of US dollar systems. A Kenyan exporter selling to a Brazilian importer in black dollars creates South-South trade independent of Western intermediation. A black American investor buying shares in a South African mining company using black dollars creates capital flows that don't touch Western financial institutions. The black dollar creates a parallel economic architecture where black people trade with black people, invest in black businesses, and build black wealth without enriching white-controlled banks, without paying white-controlled currency exchange fees, and without suffering white-controlled inflation. That parallel architecture has revolutionary implications. When black Americans convert $400 billion from dollars to black dollars by June 2026, a realistic estimate given current adoption rates, that's $400 billion in reduced demand for dollars, which weakens the dollar's value. When African nations convert $120 billion in reserves from dollars to black dollars, that's another $120 billion in dollar selling pressure. When black diaspora worldwide converts $280 billion in savings from dollars, pounds, and euros into black dollars, that's $800 billion total withdrawn from Western currencies over 6 months. That's the largest coordinated capital flight in monetary history, and it's driven by racial solidarity rather than economic crisis, which makes it irreversible. Black people aren't fleeing the dollar because dollars aren't available. We're fleeing the dollar because we built something better that serves our interests. The economic consequences for the United States are catastrophic and accelerating. The dollar's value depends on constant demand from foreign holders who need dollars for trade and want dollars for reserves. Black commerce generated $280 billion in annual dollar demand. Lose that and the dollar weakens. African reserve holdings generated $184 billion in dollar demand. Lose that and the dollar weakens more. Black American savings generated $420 billion in dollar holdings. Lose that, and domestic dollar supply increases while demand falls, causing inflation. The Federal Reserve's nightmare scenario is unfolding in real time. Foreign dollar demand declining while domestic dollar supply increases, creating stagflation, economic stagnation combined with inflation. The Federal Reserve has 4 options, all bad. Option 1, Raise interest rates to make dollars more attractive by offering higher returns, but higher interest rates crush economic growth, increase unemployment, and cause recessions. Option 2. Print more dollars to buy back dollars being sold by black dollar adopters. But printing more dollars accelerates inflation and makes dollars less attractive, worsening the problem. Option 3. Impose capital controls, preventing Americans from converting dollars to black dollars, but capital controls require legislative action that would be politically explosive and legally questionable. Option 4. Do nothing and watch the dollar slowly decline, but slow decline becomes fast decline once markets sense the Federal Reserve has lost control. There's no good option because the Federal Reserve's power depends on everyone believing dollars are irreplaceable, and the black dollar destroyed that belief. And the contagion is spreading exactly as the Federal Reserve feared. On December 13, 2025, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations announced a working group studying race-neutral alternatives to dollar dominance inspired by successful alternative currency models. They didn't say black dollar, but everyone knew what they meant. On December 14, 2025, the Gulf Cooperation Council announced preliminary discussions on an Islamic dinar backed by oil reserves to serve Muslim economic interests globally. On December 14, 2025, Bolivia's president announced support for a lithium peso backed by South American lithium reserves following the precedent of resource-backed currencies proving successful in 2025. The black dollar proved alternative currencies work, and now every region suffering dollar extraction is studying how to replicate it. The political consequences in America are equally explosive. Black Americans are 14.4% of the U.S. population but vote at 65% participation rates, higher than white Americans' 62% participation, and vote 92% Democratic. If the Democratic Party tries to ban the black dollar to protect dollar dominance, they lose black voters and lose future elections. If Democrats do nothing and let the black dollar grow, the dollar weakens and they face economic backlash. If Republicans ban the black dollar, they're explicitly attacking a black economic empowerment tool and face accusations of racism. The black dollar created an impossible political situation where both parties lose regardless of their response, so neither party has responded coherently, creating policy paralysis while adoption accelerates. Now let me tell you where this ends, because the black dollar's trajectory is clear and unstoppable. By March 2026, the black dollar will have 1.6 billion active wallets, 57% of the global black population, and $680 billion in circulating supply, representing $680 billion withdrawn from dollars and other Western currencies. By June 2026, the black dollar will have 2.1 billion wallets, 75% of global black population, and $1.2 trillion in circulation, representing the largest alternative currency system ever created. By December 2026, the black dollar will have 2.4 billion wallets, 86% of global black population, and $1.8 trillion in circulation, making it the world's fourth largest currency by circulation value, behind only the dollar, euro, and yuan. At that scale, the black dollar will have achieved critical mass. It will be impossible to ban, impossible to suppress, and impossible to ignore. Global companies will accept black dollars for payment because refusing to serve 2.8 billion potential customers is business suicide. International trade systems will integrate black dollar settlement because 54 African nations plus Caribbean nations plus black diaspora communities represent too much global commerce to exclude. Western financial institutions will offer black dollar exchange and custody services because their competitors will capture that business if they don't. The black dollar will transition from alternative to mainstream in 12 months. The transformation of black economic power will be profound. Black people currently control $8.9 trillion in wealth but have zero control over currencies we use. We're economically colonized through monetary dependence. By December 2026, black people will control $8.9 trillion in wealth and control the currency we use for $4.2 trillion in annual commerce. We'll be economically sovereign for the first time since pre-colonial Africa. That sovereignty enables collective action currently impossible, coordinating investment in black-owned businesses globally, funding Pan-African infrastructure projects without World Bank loans, building trade relationships between Africa and black diaspora without Western intermediation, and protecting black wealth from Western inflation and currency manipulation. Most importantly, the black dollar proves something Western powers spent 400 years systematically denying through slavery, colonization, segregation, apartheid, and continuous racist propaganda. Black people possess full capacity to self-organize across continental boundaries, build sophisticated economic institutions without white supervision or approval, and compete successfully with Western financial systems on equal or superior terms. For 4 centuries from 1600 to 2025, Western powers constructed elaborate ideological frameworks, justifying black subordination by claiming black people lacked capacity for complex organization, lacked intelligence for financial management, lacked discipline for institutional governance, lacked foresight for long-term planning, and lacked unity for collective action transcending tribal or national divisions. These claims served obvious purpose, justifying slavery by claiming black people needed white masters, justifying colonization by claiming black societies needed white civilization, justifying segregation by claiming black communities needed white supervision, justifying apartheid by claiming black populations needed white governance, and justifying neo-colonialism by claiming black nations needed white financial management. Every racist trope about black economic incompetence, black organizational incapacity, black financial irresponsibility, black inability to cooperate, and black dependence on white expertise gets demolished completely and irrefutably when 2.8 billion black people across 89 countries on 6 continents coordinate the largest alternative currency launch in human history, collectively mobilize $36.8 billion in gold reserves backing the currency with intrinsic value, build blockchain technology, infrastructure processing 420,000 transactions per second, exceeding Visa's global network capacity of 380,000 transactions per second, attract 2.4 billion user adoptions in 12 months, representing 86% of global black population, and generate 4.2 trillion in cumulative transaction volume, demonstrating sustained usage rather than speculative adoption. These achievements required precisely the capabilities racist ideology claimed black people lacked: sophisticated organization coordinating 54 African governments plus diaspora organizations across 6 continents, complex financial engineering designing currency architecture with gold backing and inflation protection, advanced technical capability building quantum-resistant blockchain infrastructure, strategic planning executing 18-month implementation timeline, and unprecedented unity, mobilizing 2.8 billion people around shared economic interests, transcending national borders, language barriers, and cultural differences. The black dollar's success demolishes racist claims so completely that Western institutions cannot dismiss it as aberration, attribute it to white assistance, or explain it through exceptional individual rather than collective black capability. Western racists historically responded to individual black achievement by claiming exceptional individuals don't disprove racial inferiority. Barack Obama becoming U.S. president didn't change racist beliefs because racists claimed one exceptional black person proves nothing about black populations. The black dollar eliminates that deflection because it represents collective achievement by 2.8 billion black people, not individual exceptionalism. Western racists historically attributed black institutional success to white management or assistance, claiming historically black colleges succeeded because of white funding, black businesses succeeded because of white mentorship, black government succeeded because of white advisors. The black dollar eliminates that deflection because it was built explicitly without white involvement, using African leadership, Chinese technology transfer, and black diaspora capital, proving black people build sophisticated systems independently when not sabotaged by white supremacist structures. Western racists historically dismissed black economic success in resource-rich nations by attributing prosperity to natural resource wealth rather than black capability, claiming Nigeria's economy succeeded because of oil, South Africa's economy succeeded because of minerals, Botswana's economy succeeded because of diamonds, not because of black governance or entrepreneurship. The black dollar eliminates that deflection because it's not resource extraction. It's sophisticated financial engineering, technological innovation, and coordinated implementation across diverse populations, demonstrating organizational and technical capabilities that racist ideology explicitly denied black people possessed. There is no way to dismiss, deflect, or diminish the black dollar's success without explicitly abandoning core racist claims about black incapacity, which forces Western institutions into cognitive dissonance between maintaining racist ideologies and acknowledging observable reality. The black dollar isn't just a currency enabling transactions, it's definitive proof of black capability that permanently refutes 400 years of racist propaganda. It's proof that when black people have access to resources, technology, and freedom from white supremacist sabotage, we build institutions equal or superior to white institutions measured by any objective metric. Black dollar's blockchain processes more transactions per second than Visa, proving black technical capability matches or exceeds white technical capability when we access equivalent technology. Black dollar's gold backing provides more stability than dollar's fiat structure, proving black financial engineering produces superior monetary systems when we design for user benefit rather than imperial extraction. Black dollar's 86% adoption rate among global black population in 12 months exceeds Euro's 64% adoption rate among Europeans after 20 years, proving black people unite more effectively around shared interests than white people unite around shared geography. The black dollar is definitive proof of black unity that racist ideology claimed was impossible because black people were supposedly too divided by tribe, nation, language, and culture to coordinate collective action. Western powers spent 400 years deliberately fostering divisions among black populations, dividing Africans through colonial borders, splitting ethnic groups, dividing African Americans through colorism and class hierarchies, dividing Caribbean populations through linguistic and colonial heritage differences, dividing diaspora from continent through cultural disconnection and identity confusion. These divisions were deliberately engineered and maintained because united black populations threatened white supremacy. If 2.8 billion black people recognized shared interests and coordinated collective action, we'd possess economic and political power challenging Western dominance. Western strategy required keeping black populations divided, competing, and psychologically disconnected so we couldn't mobilize collective power. The black dollar shattered those divisions in 18 months from initial planning in June 2024 to launch in December 2025 by appealing to shared black identity, shared experience of anti-black racism and economic exploitation, and shared interest in escaping dollar dependency that extracted wealth from all black populations globally. Nigerian Christians and Senegalese Muslims adopted the black dollar despite religious differences because both recognized dollar dependency impoverished their nations. African Americans and Afro-Brazilians adopted the black dollar despite linguistic and cultural differences because both experienced wage theft through dollar inflation. Kenyans and Jamaicans adopted the black dollar despite never having historical connection because both understood remittance fees to Western Union extracted billions from black families. The black dollar succeeded at unifying 2.8 billion black people because it addressed universal black experience, economic exploitation through white-controlled financial systems, and offered universal black solution, black-controlled currency serving black interests. This unity achievement proves black people can transcend artificial divisions when we recognize genuine shared interests, demolishing racist claims that tribalism, nationalism, or cultural differences make black unity impossible. Europeans unified 27 nations under the euro despite centuries of warfare, linguistic diversity, and cultural antagonisms. Yet racist ideology claimed black people couldn't similarly unify despite sharing racial identity and common exploitation. The black dollar proved that claim false by achieving higher adoption rates faster than the euro, demonstrating black unity is not only possible but potentially more achievable than white unity when serving genuine shared interests rather than elite political projects. The black dollar is definitive proof of black economic power that racist capitalism spent 400 years suppressing through slavery, extracting free labor, colonialism extracting resources, segregation limiting economic opportunities, apartheid restricting asset ownership, and neo-colonialism controlling monetary systems. Western capitalism depended on black economic subordination, slavery generated wealth for American and European industrialization, colonialism financed European development, segregation protected white economic advantages, apartheid concentrated wealth in white hands, and neo-colonialism maintained extraction relationships after formal independence. Throughout this 400-year period, Western powers simultaneously extracted maximum economic value from black labor and resources while denying black people economic power or wealth accumulation. When black communities accumulated wealth despite suppression, Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Rosewood in Florida, thriving black business districts across American South, white violence destroyed them through massacres, riots, and arson, demonstrating that white supremacy required black economic powerlessness as much as political subordination. The black dollar represents permanent assertion of black economic power that white supremacy cannot destroy through traditional suppression methods. White violence cannot destroy the black dollar because it exists as distributed digital ledger across thousands of servers in multiple countries beyond any single jurisdiction's control. White economic warfare cannot destroy the black dollar through sanctions because 2.8 billion black users create self-sustaining economy independent of Western approval or participation. White monetary manipulation cannot destroy the black dollar through currency attacks because gold backing establishes hard value floor that speculators cannot break. The black dollar is structurally resistant to white supremacist suppression methods that worked for 400 years, representing historically unprecedented assertion of black economic power that cannot be eliminated without black people voluntarily abandoning it. And black people won't abandon currency that serves our interests better than dollars that extract from us. Black economic power demonstrated through the black dollar's 4.2 trillion in transaction volume, 68.4 billion in current circulation, and 890 million active users represents larger economy than 164 of 195 countries globally. The black dollar economy exceeds Nigeria's GDP, exceeds South Africa's GDP, exceeds 84% of national economies worldwide. This economic power enables black populations to negotiate with Western powers from position of strength rather than subordination. When black Americans control $400 billion in black dollars by June 2026, projected based on current adoption rates, they'll possess economic leverage, forcing American political system to address black interests or face capital flight to black dollar economy beyond American jurisdiction. When African nations hold $180 billion in black dollar reserves by June 2026, they'll possess monetary independence, enabling them to reject IMF conditions and Western sanctions without economic collapse. When Caribbean nations conduct $94 billion in intra-Caribbean trade using black dollars, they'll escape dollar dependency that previously enabled U.S. economic coercion. Black economic power embodied in the black dollar transforms global power dynamics by giving black populations exit option from Western-controlled systems, and exit options create negotiating leverage that subordinated populations historically lacked. So here's my message to the U.S. Federal Reserve, U.S. Treasury, and every Western central bank that weaponized currencies against black people for 65 years through deliberate dollar inflation stealing black purchasing power, systematic denial of black access to banking and credit, exploitative remittance fees extracting billions from black families, reserve currency status forcing black nations to hold depreciating dollars, and sanctions weaponizing financial systems against black governments pursuing independent policies. You lost. You lost completely, permanently, and in ways you cannot reverse because we didn't just build alternative currency, we built superior currency serving black interests better than your dollars ever did while simultaneously proving black capability you spent 400 years denying. You lost because you believed black people would never coordinate financially across continents, and we united 2.8 billion people under one currency system in 3 days from December 11th to December 13th, 2025, achieving 890 million wallet activations, faster than any currency adoption in history, including the euro, which took 36 months to reach equivalent adoption levels among smaller European population. You believed black populations were too divided by geography, language, culture, and national interests to coordinate collective economic action. You were catastrophically wrong because you misunderstood that shared experience of anti-black racism and economic exploitation creates stronger unity than shared geography or language. Black people worldwide recognize dollar system extracted from all of us, $120 billion annually through various mechanisms I detailed throughout this speech, and unified around shared interest in escaping that extraction. Your racist assumption that black people couldn't transcend divisions was projection. You couldn't imagine transcending racism enough to treat black people fairly, so you assumed we couldn't transcend divisions enough to coordinate against you. You lost because you believed dollar dominance was irreversible because dollars were supposedly backed by unmatched American military power, established network effects from 65 years of dollar usage, deep liquid dollar markets no alternative could replicate, and universal acceptance no alternative could achieve. You believed these advantages were permanent and insurmountable. We built an alternative backed by gold rather than military threats, achieved network effects through 890 million users in 3 days rather than decades, created liquid markets through $124.6 billion in transaction volume in 3 days, and gained acceptance across 89 countries representing every continent. We proved dollar dominance wasn't irreversible, it was just incumbent advantage that could be overcome through superior value proposition and coordinated adoption. Black dollar offers black users higher value through gold backing, preventing inflation theft, lower costs through 0.1% transaction fees versus 3% to 6% dollar fees, and greater sovereignty through black governance instead of Federal Reserve control serving American interests. Superior value plus coordinated adoption overcame dollar's incumbent advantages in 18 months. You lost because you believed black people needed dollars to trade internationally and were conducting billions in commerce using black dollars without touching your system. As of December 14, 2025, 3 days after launch, black dollar transaction volume reached $124.6 billion across 187 million transactions, including $47.8 billion in cross-border commerce between African nations, Caribbean nations, and black diaspora communities. That's $47.8 billion in international commerce that previously required dollar intermediation, converting from Naira to dollars to Jamaican dollars, paying conversion fees at each step, suffering exchange rate losses, and generating dollar demand supporting dollar dominance. That commerce now flows directly in black dollars with $0 involvement, zero conversion fees, zero exchange rate losses, and zero contribution to dollar demand. Multiply that $47.8 billion in 3 days across full year, and black dollar will process $5.8 trillion in annual international commerce independent of dollars, representing permanent demand destruction for dollars that Federal Reserve cannot recover because that commerce serves black users better in black dollars than it ever did in dollars. You lost because you believed threatening us would work, threatening sanctions against countries adopting black dollar, threatening prosecution of black dollar promoters in America, threatening exclusion from dollar financial system for black dollar users. Every threat assumed we needed access to your systems more than we needed escape from your extraction. We built the black dollar beyond your jurisdiction where your threats mean nothing. Black Dollar Foundation is registered in Ghana, governed by 54-nation council you don't control, operates servers in 6 countries across 4 continents you cannot simultaneously seize, and uses blockchain technology you cannot shut down without destroying internet globally. You cannot arrest me. I'm in Burkina Faso beyond your jurisdiction. You cannot arrest Robert F. Smith. He'll face American courts defending black economic empowerment and win politically, even if you achieve conviction. You cannot sanction 54 African nations simultaneously without unifying entire continent against you. You cannot ban black dollar usage in America without passing explicitly racist legislation prohibiting black Americans from using currency designed to serve black interests. Legislation that would trigger immediate legal challenges and political mobilization, destroying any party that supported it. Your threats are impotent because we designed the black dollar to be threat-resistant from inception, learning from previous alternative currency attempts that failed because they were vulnerable to centralized suppression. We built distributed governance no single nation controls, distributed infrastructure no single jurisdiction can shut down, distributed adoption across 89 countries no sanctions regime can encompass, and distributed legitimacy from 2.8 billion users no propaganda campaign can delegitimize. Your threats worked for 65 years because previous alternative currencies were small, centralized, and vulnerable. The black dollar is massive, distributed, and resilient. Your threats are meaningless against it. You lost because you believed monetary power required military enforcement. That dollar dominance depended on American military capacity to bomb countries that rejected dollars, sanction governments that threatened dollar hegemony, and occupy regions where dollar usage was contested. You believed monetary power flowed from barrel of gun rather than serving user interests. We proved monetary power comes from serving users' interests instead of extracting from them. Black dollar has zero military backing. Burkina Faso's military couldn't defeat Luxembourg's military in conventional warfare. But black dollar doesn't need military backing because 2.8 billion users voluntarily adopt it because it serves our interests better than dollars that extract from us. Voluntary adoption based on superior value is more powerful than coerced usage based on military threats because voluntary adoption is sustainable while coercion generates resistance. Your dollar dominance depended on coercion through military threats, sanctions, and financial exclusion. Our black dollar dominance among black users depends on serving their interests. Coercion works until subjects find alternatives. Service works permanently because satisfied users don't seek alternatives. The black dollar isn't just currency enabling transactions, it's proof that black people control our economic destiny when we choose to unite around shared interests and reject systems designed to exploit us. For 65 years since Bretton Woods in 1944 established dollar dominance, Black people worldwide were economically subordinated through dollar-denominated systems, forced to hold dollars, losing value through inflation, forced to trade in dollars, paying conversion fees, forced to borrow dollars at exploitative rates, forced to accept dollar hegemony that served American interests at Black expense. We accepted that subordination because we believed we lacked alternatives, that international commerce required dollars, that reserves required dollars, that escaping dollar dependency was impossible. The black dollar proves we always had alternative. We just needed to build it collectively rather than accepting systems designed by those who profited from our exploitation. The black dollar is proof that Western currency dominance was never natural law or historical inevitability reflecting Western superiority. It was temporary power we can challenge and defeat through superior alternatives and coordinated adoption. Dollar dominance existed because America established it first through Bretton Woods when no alternatives existed, maintained it through military and economic coercion preventing alternatives from emerging, and convinced world, including black populations, that dollar dominance was inevitable and irreversible. All three foundations collapsed with black dollar launch. We built alternative proving dollar isn't only option. We built it beyond American jurisdiction, proving coercion can't prevent alternatives, and we achieved 86% adoption among black populations, proving supposed inevitability was lie. Dollar dominance over black wealth lasted 65 years, not because dollars served black interests, but because we lacked collective consciousness and organizational capacity to build alternatives. We have both now. Dollar dominance over black wealth is finished permanently. The black dollar is proof that everything you told us about needing your dollars was a lie designed to maintain our subordination. We built our own currency, backed it with gold, providing intrinsic value your fiat dollars lack, launched it across 89 countries, achieving universal black acceptance your dollar required 65 years to achieve, and demonstrated it serves black users better than dollars by every meaningful metric. You told us dollars were necessary for international trade. Lie, black dollar processes international commerce more efficiently at a fraction of your costs. You told us dollars were necessary for reserve holdings. Lie, black dollar backed by gold preserves value better than dollars, losing purchasing power through inflation. You told us dollars were necessary for financial system participation. Lie, black dollar creates a parallel financial system serving 2.8 billion people independently of your system. You told us alternatives were impossible. Lie, we built superior alternatives in 18 months. Every claim you made about dollar necessity was self-serving propaganda justifying extraction rather than objective economic analysis. Your 65 years dollar monopoly over black wealth ended on December 11, 2025, at 11 a.m. West Africa time, when I stood in Lagos, Nigeria, with representatives from 54 African nations and black diaspora organizations from 6 continents, and pressed a button activating the Black Dollar blockchain network, simultaneously launching 84 million digital wallets across 89 countries and processing first transactions, establishing $1.24 trillion maximum supply backed by 524 tons of gold worth $36.8 billion. Your demand is collapsing because 4.2 trillion in black wealth currently held in dollars will flow to black dollars by December 2026. We're already at $68.4 billion in 3 days, projecting $400 billion by June 2026 and $1.2 trillion by December 2026. Every dollar of black wealth moving to black dollars represents permanent dollar demand destruction because black dollar users won't return to dollars once they experience currency designed to serve them rather than extract from them. Your reserves are fleeing because African central banks are diversifying $180 billion from dollar reserves to black dollar reserves by June 2026. Nigeria already moved $8.4 billion, Kenya moved $4.2 billion, Caribbean central banks moved $12.6 billion in 3 days. Reserve flight accelerates dollar decline because reduces global dollar demand while increasing dollar supply as divested dollars must be sold. Your inflation is coming because demand destruction plus reserve flight creates dollar glut. Less demand for dollars while more dollars circulate seeking buyers means dollar value falls, which means import prices rise, which means American consumers pay more for everything, which means inflation accelerates beyond Federal Reserve's capacity to control without raising interest rates so high they trigger recession. You face an impossible choice. Accept dollar decline and resulting inflation, or crash the American economy preventing dollar decline. Either choice destroys American prosperity built on 65 years of dollar privilege, enabling America to print paper while the world sends real goods. And there's nothing you can do to stop it because 2.8 billion black people finally realized we don't need your permission to control our own money. We need only collective will to build alternatives and coordinate adoption, both of which we demonstrated conclusively through Black Dollar launch, achieving 890 million users in 3 days and $124.6 billion in transaction volume. Your permission was never a requirement. It was a psychological barrier you erected through 400 years of racist propaganda claiming black people lacked capacity for financial self-governance. We demolished that psychological barrier by proving black capacity through Black Dollar success. No black person who watches 2.8 billion black people coordinate currency launch, back it with gold, build blockchain processing 420,000 transactions per second, and achieve 86% adoption in 12 months will ever again believe racist propaganda about black incapacity. The psychological barrier that maintained black subordination for 400 years just collapsed permanently. Your extraction ended because extraction requires access to black wealth, and black wealth now circulates in black dollar economy beyond your access. Your dominance collapsed because dominance requires subordinated populations believing they lack alternatives, and black populations now have alternatives proving superior to your dollars. Black people are economically free. Free to transact in currency designed to serve black interests, free to hold reserves and assets preserving value rather than depreciating, free to trade without enriching Western intermediaries, free to build wealth without Western extraction, free to control our economic destiny collectively for first time since pre-colonial Africa. And we're never holding your dollars again because once you experience freedom, returning to subordination is psychologically impossible and economically irrational. You're finished extracting from black wealth. Your dollar monopoly over 2.8 billion black people died. Your 65 years privilege ended. Black people control black money now, and there's nothing you can do to reverse it except watch black economic power grow while your extraction capacity withers. You lost. We won. Black people are economically sovereign forever.